Good morning. Hello. Welcome to a bit of a different Rostify webinar this morning. Normally we cover volunteer management topics. We bring in guests to talk about their programs. And although we have brought in some guests for this webinar, the subject matter is a little bit different. And my name is Martin O'Neill. I'm the head of marketing at Rostify. And when I joined about 3 years ago, since then I've spent quite a lot of time speaking with volunteer managers and trying to understand some of the challenges that they're up against. And one of the themes that kept coming through was I noticed that a lot of the day-to-day activities that people in charge of volunteer programs were coming up against, or what they were up to, seemed to align really, really neatly with marketing. So I put this webinar together, and this really will be a practical guide of some of the things that I've learned, some of the lessons that I've picked up over a career in marketing. Now, we're going to try and make it interactive as well. So as you can see on the slides that you can see at the moment, there's a new little tool that we've been sort of trying out for the last couple of webinars called Slido. And if you visit slido.com and then just drop in that number, it will enable you to drop in questions for our guests. And we've got some excellent guests today. So we've got Emma Peet from Formula E. I volunteer quite often with Formula E. I interact with Emma every single time that I do, and I can think of nobody better to talk about volunteer engagement, bringing the energy, hyping people up, and delivering content ahead of an event to really get people excited. That's the very essence of marketing and event management. And then also guide dogs. We've got Danielle and Pat from Guide Dogs. I love their social media. I love the content, the user-generated content that they use too. So I can think of nobody better to bring in for that element of it as well. So we've got quite a lot to go through. So I'm going to go through this at quite some pace. Please drop any of the questions down and we'll review them at the end and go through them. So here's the agenda for today. I'm going to do the first sort of 30 minutes talking about how to think like a marketer, how to frame your messaging, your branding, and your communications in order to get more impact, get more people engaged with your program using, I hope, some of the useful things that I've picked up over the years. Then we're going to go into talking about guide dogs and particularly their social media. Emma's going to talk about volunteer engagement, and then we've got a Q&A session at the end. Let's start with testing whether or not this Slido has worked for this particular presentation. So here's a question. How does your organization's brand make you feel? So if you jump onto the Slido and just type in a couple of words or whatever this sums up for you, this will be a great way of just making sure, first of all, you can hear me and that is working. There we go. Thank you. I can see words in there, but you'll understand why I've asked this question very, very soon, because it's going to tie in very neatly to some of the marketing messages. So I've got 10, 12 people already filling this out. We've got lots and lots of people typing as we go as well. And proud is standing out as one of the key emotional hooks that we've got for this. So we're going to collect these as we go through as well. So I'll be able to share some of the results from this, and I'll also share the slides afterwards as well. It's going to be particularly useful because there's some books that I really lean on and what I feel are relevant today in terms of like marketing theory that I'll be able to share with you as well. But you'll see them as they come up. So thank you for everybody for proving that the system works. And I hope to see lots of people engaged in the Q&A a little bit later. So let's skip from there. Okay, so a little bit about my background. I've been working in marketing for about 16, 17 years. My career started with the organization Towards the Right, which is, if you're from Germany, you might even recognize this name. This is a bit of a heritage brand. It's a structural glazing company that is very highly regarded. They produced a real high quality product, and it was my first sort of toe dipping into this marketing world. It taught me an awful lot about the power of brand, prestige, getting your messaging right and reaching the right type of audience. I'll get on to that in a little bit later. Mighty are a PLC in the UK, a massive organization. And I learned an awful lot about campaign management, doing things at scale, reaching people through the usual channels of like e-marketing and social. And that was quite a full-on role, just being very blunt and honest with everybody. There was a lot of reporting and data collection. So I've gone from learning about a brand, learning about what it means to respect the brand, and now over to impact, performance marketing. And then after that, I spent nearly just a little short of a decade working with Rightmove. So that was a wonderful role, working for what is a habitual app in the UK. Everybody, even when they're not looking for a house, probably has Rightmove on their phone and they're checking it every now and then. And that was a great way of me understanding the main theme that I'm going to go through today, which is why an emotional hook is way more important than just talking about features and benefits. So here's how to think like a marketeer. Now, marketing actually hasn't changed all that much since like the 50s or 60s. The principles of it are relatively similar. During the 50s and 60s, we entered a consumerism era. Everything started to explode when we had TV and radio, and people were given a lot more choice. And although the channels have changed, the how we're reaching people has changed significantly. The framing of what it is you're trying to communicate and the products that you're trying to sell hasn't changed too much. In fact, if you open any marketing reference book, even written within the last year or so, you're probably going to see the 4 Ps. So this is product, price, promotion, and place. Now, what this actually means is the product is what are you actually offering? The price is how much it will cost. The promotion is how will you let me know that this is available? And the place is where you get this. Now, I understand this might be quite basic, but it does set the sort of foundations of how you can structure your communication and think about what it is that you're actually trying to market. Now, one of the lessons that I've learned in this career is that people just simply do not care about features. They care about outcomes. And a lot of emails that I get from, people who are trying to sell me cheaper car insurance or broadband, they focus on broadband speed, or they focus on money saving. They don't ever really focus on what it actually means to me, like what's the emotional hook that I need. And the best marketing that's out there, the marketing that works the most effective, is the marketing that tugs on an emotional hook. So when I was at Rightmove, our biggest competitor at the time was Zoopla, and Zoopla's main marketing message was how much is your house worth? Now that's very factual. That's just numbers, and you do care about that, but there was something missing there. The real reason why people want to find a home and want to move. So what we decided to do is we reached out to a research agency and we got 10 to 12 people to and basically followed them on their journey. And they interviewed them and they collected sound bites from every house visit that they went to, and they were interviewed after the process of finding a home. And there was myself, the head of marketing, and the head of sort of B2C, business to consumer marketing. So I was responsible for the estate agency side of things, and the B2C was in charge of like getting the brand out and reaching the people. So one of the interviews that we listened to was a mum and a daughter that were both looking to move together. And in that interview, they said, we just want to find a home that we can be happy in. And we just had this moment where it was like, ooh, that's kind of like, when you hear it live, it kind of chokes you up a bit. And that was amazing. That was brilliant to hear that. And that created Find Your Happy. Now that was a fantastic campaign and worked incredibly well for Rightmove, and as bus shelters and on the side of taxis and all over the place in London and beyond. And that's a campaign that was successful because it was born from something that wasn't about features, it wasn't about numbers, it was about emotion. This chap here is a chap called Theodore Levitt. Now, Theodore is was a very well-respected sort of marketing and sales guru, and he came up with a really poignant phrase, and I want to share with you what that is. He said, "People don't want a drill bit. What they want is the hole that it makes." Now, that is incredibly reductive, I know, but if you think about it for a moment, it's actually really smart. Features would be zooming into the fact that it's a quarter of an inch drill bit. It's made out of this material, whatever. That's not something that you're interested in. What you're interested in is the end result, what it is that you get from it, what is the benefit from it, rather than what it actually is. And I know that is oversimplifying everything, but I think that this is a really good way to think about what it is that you're trying to communicate in your marketing. Every email that you send to get more people to attend an event or get people to volunteer or donate, are you selling the experience or are you actually selling the result? Now, a book that I really employ, if you are genuinely interested in marketing and improving your marketing skills, there is a great place to start with Seth Godin's This Is Marketing book. And he's got a phrase here: marketers don't use consumers to solve their company's problem. They use marketing to solve other people's problems. I think this is really, really smart. This is basically suggesting that, if you focus on solving people's problems, you'll be a lot more successful. So, I've got a question for everybody attending at the moment. Why do people volunteer with you? What is the reason that you think people go onto your website, get involved, and want to be involved in your program? I can see lots of people jumping on here and typing in, so that's great. That's gone straight up to like 20 people typing in, which is brilliant. So community, the mission, to give back to the community, to make a difference. They care about the charity. So community is really jumping out. And I should probably wait a second actually just to see what else comes up. But it's interesting though, isn't it? It's about how it makes them feel. People want to feel like they're making a difference and they want to feel like they're part of something. The community thing in particular is really interesting to me because that symbolizes something that in sort of marketing speak is like tribes. You gravitate naturally towards people that feel like you do, that can welcome you into a community. And that's got absolutely nothing to do with the time of day that you'll be volunteering, the hours that you'll be doing, what type, all the sort of feature elements of what it is that people would want to be involved in. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about how they make them feel. So thank you for everybody there's a lot on there. Thank you very much for everybody clicking on those. So when you think about your current events and your current volunteering opportunities, ask yourself the question: are you saying if you looked at your website today, does it say volunteer with us? Or does it say help us make the difference? And you see how one of them is outcome focused, emotion focused, rather than just actively being involved in something. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with having like volunteer with us as a header and things like that. I mean, probably for search engine optimization, it's probably quite a good thing to have. But your marketing message, the reason that people want to get involved, needs to be very clear on what you're putting out. Because if you do this right and you land that, you get a much better result. Because you can see just from the way that everybody on the call has answered that previous question, it was really about how it makes them feel. So the second part that I'd like to cover is, to me, the most important, which is a story brand. Now, a story brand is effectively pulling together that tribal element that I talked about before. Seth Godin says, people like us do things like this. If you frame what you're doing week in, week out, if you frame, Dan and Pat from Guide Dogs, they have a community, they have a culture within their organization. and they know that the people that volunteer with their program are like this. People like us do things like this. If you read back on maybe some of the communications that you've sent out, some of the web pages that you've got, some of the marketing that you've put out to ask for donations, is it being framed as we need your help and this is what we'll do, or is it, you know, more aligned with we know you feel this way, or if you feel this way, this is one way that you can help. And it's a subtle difference, but it makes a huge impact. Now, at the start of the 2000s to about 2020, we had what we called like the internet era of marketing. And this is just my take, but I think there's quite a lot of evidence out there to support it. But from 2020 onwards, I think we've entered what I sort of refer to as the authenticity era. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think the freedom of information and how people get their news has gone from say the BBC News or something like that to content creation, YouTube, and a multitude of other sources. And we've also got a younger generation that's coming through that is tech savvy, that is suspicious, that cares about environmental issues, and is on the pulse when it comes to sort of cultural sensitivity too. And what you can see when you look at, say, brands like Levi's and Dove and people like that, is that they've changed their marketing to better align with being authentic and real, rather than just kind of like the old-fashioned digital age of like, here's a presenting a world that doesn't feel like it's relevant to their tribe, to how they feel. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of this in real life at the moment. Patagonia. So a really interesting story behind this particular brand. They focus very much on ethical clothes production. So this is very much sort of like a Gen Z sort of movement kind of brand as well. They care about the environment, and they care about sustainability, and they make it very clear across their marketing. I'll show you how they do that in just a moment. Then you've got Airbnb. It's maybe a little bit more contentious if you watch the news and see what's going on in Spain and the pushback that they're getting there, but how they are reframing themselves since all of those incidents. They've rebranded some of their messages lately to lean in to a sense of community. Now, they are probably being a bit more reactive to what's actually happening out there, and they're adjusting their marketing accordingly, but they do want to be positioned as, when you interact with Airbnb and you're part of that community of renters and occupiers, that you're part of a global community. And then probably my favorite of the bunch, Tony's Chocolonely. So this is a brand that we bring these to like every event that we do, and we're kind of a big supporter of this, not just because it tastes nice, but they frame everything around the issue of slavery and child labor. They're very, very clear on their marketing, on their website, on their brand, about how supporting this particular brand over others helps address some of these global issues that are going on. A book that I think has been the most impactful for me personally when it comes to understanding how to frame a brand. So I've talked a little bit about theory, but what does that actually mean? Like, how do you actually use it? I use this all the time. And this is a really neat structure of a way of you thinking about your brands. Now, Donald Miller wrote this book, and he basically can put this up on the screen, and you can, there's normally sort of tracks, say like a film script. So you could have, I'm going to throw this in, but if you had like the character is Bilbo Baggins, the problem is that he has a ring to destroy. He meets Gandalf, who gives him a plan to go to Mordor, calls them into action, collects them all, the Fellowship of the Ring, and then that results in either spoilers, the ring either, I won't spoil it, I'll just say either the ring is destroyed and everyone is happy, or another route and they manage to avoid failure. So I know that sounds funny, sort of tying that to a brand, but I'm going to show you how that works for someone like Patagonia. So they look at the character as being the consumer, and the problem is that I need to buy clothes, but I've been told that if I do, that cheap fashion and mass production means it's causing harm. Now, the guide is Patagonia, and they say you can buy clothes ethically. It doesn't have to be this way. And the brand messages they put out align with that message. So they're saying there is a better way. Be part of our community. Join in. Shop online. Find them online. And that results in me. I feel better because I've not gone for fast fashion. I found something that I like to wear, and I didn't have to compromise my principles. This genuinely works, and it can be used in your businesses. It can be used in any event or charity or donation, or like, you know, if whether you're looking for donations or volunteering, framing what you're doing in this way helps you really align with your overall mission. And the mission is the most important thing. Patagonia know it because on their website, making clothes causes harm. Like they put that front and center on their website. This is what they do. They make clothes and they're making that statement. So they are very much aligned with that mission. So let's flip this on its head a little bit and look what that might mean for the people that are on this call for yourself. So the character here could be a donor or a volunteer. The problem is I want to help, but I don't know how. The guide is you showing them that there are plenty of ways to help. And if you do help with them, these are the outcomes. Here is a volunteer portal, for example. Here's the different opportunities that you have, but not just showing them, but showing the outcomes too. Making them very, very clear that it's easy for them to sign up and be involved in it. And that result makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I can be involved in it. I can be a member of the community, as you've all said, is one of the most biggest drivers. And I can avoid feeling unappreciated because I've connected the mission to the overall journey that I've just been on there. That is the difference between having a brand that people recognize and having a story brand that's linked to an outcome. So if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more about that, I'm going to send around links to where you can find some of these resources, but I would certainly recommend, even if you're just curious about branding and marketing, check that book out because it is very, very good. So again, I'm realizing I'm going through this really, really quickly, and you can see why we've added another date in November. There's an awful lot to go through. Marketing is such a large topic, such a massive principle in most organizations. I'm going to go through 3 things on here of key lessons that I've learned in my career. The first one is from Ian Kennedy, an old boss of mine at Rightmove. He said, "And is not your friend." And if you go to any script writing classes or professional writing classes, that this will be one of the first lessons that you learn, because "and" confuses. If any of your marketing that you send out, if any of your emails or any of your social media says you can do this and you can do that and it will mean this, then you need to rethink how you're framing this. Stick to one thing, lean into that one thing, and if you can't do that and you need to add extra things, I think you're doing the wrong thing. You need to stop, reset, remind yourself, what is the message that we need to put out here? Every time you put "and," you just blur the lines a little bit and you make things a little bit more confusing. Every time I send out communication through Rostify, I always try and make sure there's one key thing to say and it's clear, and I will try my hardest not to include the word "and" in that. I am obsessed with problems. I love problems because a problem is just basically an opportunity to find a solution. And in marketing, if you are obsessed with problems, you'll be an effective marketer. Problems are basically someone putting their hand up and saying, I've got these huge pain points here and I'm just not finding an answer. If you can provide an answer to a problem, people will love you. That's the best way, I think, to cut through a lot of noise. And thinking about it, I think like today, because there's so many different ways that people gather their marketing messages through their phone and people are glued to it all the time, you're bombarded with so many different messages, and most of the time, more often than not, it's just features. Buy this, get this, be part of that. Now, what none of it is doing is addressing problems and challenges that people face. The things that do are the things that you remember. So if you get obsessed with problems and how your product, organization, or service overcomes them, you can much easier cut through. I hope that makes sense. Last thing is, it takes a lot less than you think to stand out. And that might seem a little bit sort of maybe a little bit disrespectful to a lot of the marketing that's out there, but I honestly believe most of what gets pushed out is quick, fast, easy, just wants results. And I think sometimes just putting a little bit of thought into it and leaning into your mission and be very clear, just taking your time to carve that message, you'll find yourself standing out really, really easy, because not many people go to the trouble of doing that. I'm going to show you a really neat example, almost embarrassingly simple way of viewing this. So I worked for a marketing director who happened to work for Bacardi for a while, and Bacardi owned Johnny Walker, the whiskey. I don't know if they still do, but at the time he did. Anyway, he's working for this agency, and they said, look, sales were down. We needed to find a new way to branch out, and we need some clever. Show me something clever from the agency. So my ex-marketing director is standing in the supermarket, and he's looking along the shelf. And one thing he realized is that all these labels are all running straight along. Every bottle kind of looks the same. So what do they decide to do? Well, it's so simple. They just shifted the label. And this is what I mean by it doesn't take much to stand out. You've just got to find an opportunity to do something that somebody else isn't doing, or just putting that little extra bit of thought in it. And this is a brand that's still around, obviously, and I'm told reliably that they did very well out of that campaign. But regardless of the product, regardless of how they got there, having that mindset to think a little bit differently can really help you stand out. So before I hand over to guide dogs, I do want to talk a little bit about, like, well, how do you practically use some of these tools? I think I would start with the brand story. Be very, very clear. Work as a team. Pull people together. So what does our brand actually mean, and what does our mission mean? And how does that impact the people that we want to reach? Like, what's the story that we can tell? Once you've carved that out, I think you find it much easier to get your message across, attract more people, and land when it's such a noisy and difficult environment to break through in. They've got so many distractions, and not just for other marketing messages too, but distractions of people's time. People have only got a certain amount of hours in the day. And I doubt that many people volunteer or be involved in events just because I happen to be free on a Saturday. No one is free. Everyone is busy. They do it because you've managed to reach them in a way that meant something to them. So I would start there. I think you've got to ask your volunteers why they care about. I'm sure most of you do, but really use them to carve out what that message actually is. What's the emotive reason? First question that I asked on this presentation was, how does your organization's brand make you feel? Your volunteers will tell you how it makes them feel, and you should use that. If you do that, it will inform you of which personas, what groups of people, what little tribes within your community can you reach. Can you group those into lots of different groups and then communicate to those in different ways? Sometimes that takes a tech resource where you can view your database from a top-down view and ring fence certain audiences. And if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, then what you can do is go back to your brand story message, find the emotive hooks that make people want to get involved, and give them a story that resonates specifically for them. That works really, really well if you've got, say, volunteers, but you also want to make them donors, by suggesting a message that, look, we know that you're very, very busy. If you aren't able to volunteer, perhaps you'd like to donate. If you did, this is what it would mean. This is our story. This is what it will mean to you. And then very much, I think it will be beneficial for you to focus on feels, not features. Features will just help people differentiate from one product to the next, but it isn't the reason why people lock in to either your program, your product, or your event. It's how it makes them feel. Day to day, I use task management systems. So I use Monday all day, every day. I make a Monday board for pretty much anything. It's a really good way of tracking what gets done, accountability, and sort of reviewing it after the fact as well. Two books that I recommend that you read. This is Marketing by Seth Godin and Building a Brand Story. And if you are interested in better creative writing or producing better content, it could be worth dipping your toe into things like, say, ChatGPT and coming up with suggestions, being very literal and saying, this is our brand story. How do you suggest that we present this? It comes up with some really neat ideas. I'm not afraid to say that I love looking at ChatGPT for inspiration and then curating what it gives me and come up with some suggestions. Yes. Okay. So there's quite a lot that I whizzed through there. We are going to do a follow-up on the 5th of November where we've done the kind of story brand element. I'm going to be leaning a little bit more into perhaps some of the more sort of practical elements of social media and content creation. But now, perfectly timed there. Thank you very much, Pat and Danielle. I'm going to be handing over to them. Danielle and Pat, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I'll steer on the presentation. If you just tell me to move on, saves us shopping around a bit. If you'd like to introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Yeah, that's great. So hi everyone, I'm Danielle. I'm the channel manager at Guide Dogs for Meta and LinkedIn. I have been in a similar position to yourselves. I used to be volunteer and coordinator, so I used to be more on the ground, sort of helping to recruit volunteers. So I've been in both ends of the spectrum of not having much resource and then coming more into the marketing space. I'll pass to Pat.
Hi everyone. So yeah, my name is Pat. I've been with Guide Dogs for about 5 years. I'm a digital marketing officer, but again, I started as a volunteering coordinator. So again, Danielle and I know too well what it's like to have to recruit volunteers with little tools and resources, really. So we hope that our presentation gives you kind of a really good springboard, so that you can start doing that and feel a little bit more confident about it.
Next slide, please. So today we're going to cover a few topics. So we're going to go through target audience, so how to identify who you're speaking to on social media. We're going to go through content, so what are the best formats for posting on socials, how to use community management to your advantage, what platforms to use and how to best use them, and how to use trends to your advantage. So if we have next slide, and I'll pass to Pat.
Cool, thank you so much. So yes, target audience. Obviously, this is all about who you're talking to. So you need to think of who your target audience is and focus on which social media channels that they might be on. And please be led by data here and don't let anecdotal evidence run the show, because it could be really costly for you. So you need to be looking at what your data is saying and who you're actually looking for, whether it's volunteering opportunities, donors, who you're targeting basically. So for example, make sure to check who is responding to your posts and who do you actually wish was responding to your posts. How did those people find you and what is bringing you results? Whether, again, those are applications, awareness, or acquisitions. Be data-led and go from there. That definitely will not fail you. The second point we've got here is think about how your target audience would want to be communicated with on social media channels. So I think a really good piece of advice here is to create full-bodied personas of who you're trying to talk to and how they want to be spoken to on the kind of varying social media channels. So create a real person in your mind, all the way from which supermarket do they shop at to do they have kids, where do they work, what are their hobbies, what do they value, and again, how they want to be spoken to. And then create kind of content that reaches just that one person, but actually that will be really specific and it will be way better than being super broad and not reaching anybody. And again, you can have multiple personas in your head that you're writing to and trying to reach. So go from all of the different spectrums of your target audience and speak to that particular person. And then lastly on this slide, think of the mindset that people are in when they're using a social media channel that you are promoting on. So obviously LinkedIn, people tend to be in work mode. They're either learning or thinking about earning. You need to be really professional there. And it is a very different vibe to TikTok, where people want to be entertained and they might have a spare 5-10 minutes where they just want to chill, but you can actually really nail them right in that moment with something that matches the vibe of that social media channel. So create content for social media channels with those vibes in mind. If you're creating something for TikTok, obviously you probably wouldn't populate it onto LinkedIn. So it is really quality over quantity here. And next slide, please, over to Danielle.
So I'm going to go through sort of content, what to post on socials. So the most important element is obviously the visuals. This is what's going to captivate the audience the most. So you need to make sure that your content is visually appealing and is going to engage your audience. So a great way to check that is just think about your own habits and what you like to see on social media. So we tend to use a lot of like case studies. We use a lot of like FAQ videos. We just sort of experiment with different content that's going to captivate our audience. You don't necessarily need any fancy equipment. We go around with our phones all the time. You just can do a few simple techniques to make it a bit more higher quality. So always make sure to clean your camera lens. It seems really simple, but it does make a huge difference. And then using natural light as well. So doing content in front of windows or outside can really help elevate it. You also need to know that different platforms have different formats. They have different aspect ratios and resolutions and length of videos. So just make sure to research that beforehand. The next most important element is your caption. So we always make sure to include a hook at the start of each caption, like a question or a shocking fact can really help this. It just helps people to stop the scroll and want to read on more. Make sure to use short sentences and paragraphs. It makes it a lot easier to read. I usually read a caption out loud to really help me with this. You also need to make sure you're including keywords, as that helps the algorithm to identify what your content actually is. So if you're doing a post about volunteering, then making sure to use a few different keywords that are relevant to volunteering in your copy. And as we all just keep banging on about, you need to write to your target audience as well. Think about how they communicate, how they want to read things. And making sure to close with a strong call to action so they know what to do with your post. Don't be afraid to research what your competitors are doing and sort of spending time on socials as well, researching what performs well. And you can always seek inspiration from other brands or just what comes up on your feed. It can really help identify what content you need to create for your platforms. And lastly, accessibility, especially with the rise of SEO and socials. This is really important. And just to making sure that your content's inclusive for everyone. So making sure your images have alt text, making sure you use camel case, so capital letters at the start of each word for hashtags. And if you're doing any sort of text on pictures or on videos, making sure it's clear font and adding background text can really help. Now I'll pass to Pat for the next slide.
Cool, thank you. So you're on to community management, which is all about nurturing your followers. And you might think, how is that relevant to recruiting new people? But how new people see you and how you respond to common questions and how you nurture your warm audience is super important. To people sticking around and new people thinking this is really worth my time. So I think it's probably one of the most important elements of social media, because you are talking to a warm audience and you're keeping them warm, but you're showing to new people what you're all about, that community aspect. So really ensure to regularly check comments and messages that you receive and respond back in a timely, uniform manner. For regular questions or any challenging comments, please make sure that you have a prepared statement that kind of everybody in the organization agrees with and knows your kind of stance on anything that might be a little bit challenging or potentially quite popular for your organization. Ensure that responses are in a warm and friendly tone, addressing the person. If you have a tone of voice, then brilliant, and stick to it, even when you're responding to a simple comment. And then if you do have a standard answer to a question that gets asked quite a lot, try and tailor it to the person that has asked the question. So mirror their language or use, similar emojis to what they've used, as long as that is obviously appropriate to your brand. If a user posts and you don't kind of require a response, you can still react to it. I think a like goes a really long way, but by liking something, you really need to understand that as an organization, as a charity, you're showing support or approval for whatever message that person is saying or who they actually are as a person. So again, think long term, and you really don't want to be caught out on something that you've liked or commented on a couple of years ago that maybe now has become quite controversial. So think long term there. And just reacting to what people are tagging you in, reacting to things and where people are tagging you. I think that's really important because you start to create a community of people that you can rely on for content. So if somebody has tagged you in something and in the future you want to write about that kind of theme or that story, you've already got a bank of people that are interested in you and want to talk to you about it. So you can go to them to create UCG content. And then just really lastly there, remember that you can always block or mute accounts if they are causing harm. Great piece of advice is I would keep a record of the harmful comments. So any themes or any users that are particularly troubling, just in case if one day you need to take it further or new people join your team, and it's really important that you respond and deal with negative things quite quickly, nip them in the bud as fast as you can. So if you've got a record of what you've done before, then yeah, this will just help your new team, new people follow kind of that way that you want to deal with it, basically. Cool, back into Danielle.
And then I'm going to go through platforms and the differences between them and identifying which one's right for you. So Facebook is the most widely used social media platform. The main demographic is millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. Contrary to other platforms, static imagery does tend to work the best. And it's actually the most used social media platform for customer care. So a lot of people go on there to find out questions regarding to a business. They do have, if you have a page, there is an events tab, so you can let people know of upcoming events. And something I used to use quite a lot as a volunteering coordinator was like community groups, especially in areas that are specifically looking to recruit volunteers. So they're a great way to sort of promote your product without having to do it on your page. Instagram is more of a visual focused platform with a mixture of stills and videos. The most active users are Gen Z and millennials. Reels are the most popular format at the moment, but carousels are becoming increasingly popular, especially to share like educational content. And stories are a great way to reach existing followers, especially as you can sort of add links for your call to actions on there. LinkedIn is quickly growing at a rapid rate in terms of popularity at the moment, and the most active users are Gen Z and millennials. It was previously used as a place to sort of recruit, but now it's grown as a place to sort of learn and find out about company updates. So static imagery suffices, but there is a growing popularity in carousels and videos. In terms of your individual accounts, you can sign up to groups where you can write posts that can be shared with other people. So again, it's a good place for recruitment and volunteering, like Facebook pages as well. And lastly, TikTok is a short form vertical video platform. It is predominantly Gen Z and millennials again, and it's more trend driven content. So it's designed for the consumer. So you need to make sure the content on that platform is consumable. So it's either needs to be entertaining or educational. And I think we'll skip through the next slides, Martin, and just go straight to trends. But there's just a few posts here of what we've done, but you can check out our channels anyway.
Cool, thank you. So yeah, just to quickly wrap up trends. So this is obviously what people are talking about, and to stay current and engage users in real time, it's really important to jump on trends that are relevant to your brand. So here is just a couple of tools that we use at Guide Dogs to make things easier. So every morning as a team, we meet and talk about what people are talking about that day. So Google Trends is a brilliant tool for seeing what people are Googling on the day in your location. Just really to give you a bit of context around what people are looking for on that day, so you can jump on kind of reactive stories and get lots of ideas for what you could be talking about that day if it is a quiet day for you. News items, again, either go into news pages themselves, as long as it's a credible source, or you can use the Google function to find news relevant to your industry. So for guide dogs, we would Google dogs, sight loss, disability, charity, and go from there, see what's going on in the news, and see where we could add to content or post about it on our social media with our own examples, because clearly people want that information. So we want to be relevant and add to that. Social media trends, as Daniela said, don't be afraid to scroll. I think you need to scroll on lots of different social media channels to see what is trending, what the big mass following accounts are doing, influencers, your competitors as well. I think it's great to give you some ideas for content if you're kind of running short. Then we've got social media today. I'll jump into answer the public lastly. So social media today, really great website to give you updates about just industry news and what's going on with platforms if you're not kind of subscribing to any news channels already and any newsletters. I think with social media today as well, when you click on it, you are in that frame of mind of what's going on in the industry, where are the updates, whereas newsletters might get lost in your inbox and you might miss really crucial updates. And then if we could just go on to the last slide, which will show answer the public and what that's like. So sorry, I appreciate this is very small, but with Answer the Public, again, you can get some really good ideas for what you want to be talking about when writing about a particular topic. So for example, I've just chosen meta glasses there, which is a technology used by people with sight loss to help them navigate the world around them, but it can be used by anybody. So if we wanted to create social media posts about meta glasses or a blog post, I would enter meta glasses into Answer the Public, and it gives me an idea of what people are Googling. So does it translate? Does it read text? Where can I buy them? Are they good? All of those kinds of things if you're running out of ideas of what to write about within a particular topic. So yeah, we hope that was useful. We'll hand back to Martin.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, both of you. And I think one of the biggest issues that I get personally in my role is writer's block. Like where to start, like what to talk about. And this is what you've shared here, particularly with the links. And by the way, I'm going to share the links with everybody
Yes, please
afterwards
do.
in the
They're all
follow-up
in
email.
there. And with Answer the Public, just the key is the darker the orange, the more people have searched that topic. So although you can cover them all if you like, just stick to the darker ones, as that's where the interest really is.
So we have got a couple of questions that have come in, but I'm going to hand over to Emma first, and we'll do like the Q&A. But I will encourage people to hop back onto Slido and add any questions onto there that we'll cover at the end. I can see people have done that, so that's awesome. Okay, so sorry, Emma, sorry, a long wait, but we're finally there. It's lovely to see you again. If you could dive into tell everybody a little bit about your volunteer program and the topics that you're covering here. I'm excited to hear from you because I know that you're an expert when it comes to hyping people up for events. So take it away, Emma.
No pressure. All right, thanks, Martin. Yeah, so I'm Emma. I'm the event workforce manager at Formula E. What does that mean? So I look after all of the temporary event staffing at our full calendar of events. And so, for example, next season we'll have about 12 races happening across the globe, which is super exciting. And my job, luckily enough, is to actually run a volunteer program in each market as well. So I was in the fortunate position when I came in that my department didn't exist before I stepped into the role. So I've been able to build it and steer it wherever I wanted to go. And my passion project has been to roll out a volunteer program into every market, which has been like an exciting journey to go on. And there's lots of things that I've learned along the way. And I just want to I'll give you a really quick whistle-stop tour on all of the main things that we kind of do to push out our volunteer program in every market. But I mean, stepping back a few years as well, I used to sit in a role that was marketing focused as well. So I've brought a lot of the things within those roles into the role that I'm doing today. So if we kind of just do a little whistle-stop tour of everything that is showing on the left hand of that slide. So as I said, the volunteer program didn't really exist before I came into the role. So we built it up to be a global volunteer program in a very short period of time. I've only been in the role for just over 3 years. So we've built an amazing volunteer program in that time. One of the things that we did when I first stepped in was I'm going to actually go to further down the slide, is just around data. So one of the really important things that I found when I first stepped in was we didn't really know anything about this target audience that we were going out to. So I worked really closely with our business intelligence team to put together like a really in-depth post-event survey, as well as looking at all of the forms when we're onboarding new volunteers onto Rosterify to really understand the demographics that we're speaking to, because that says everything else that we do. So now, 3 years on, we have a bit more of an understanding of the people that we're speaking to and the people that we're engaging with in our volunteer program. And that steers everything from the wording that we use to the platforms that we engage with them on, like TikTok and Instagram, but also whether we use SMS or email to communicate with the volunteers. And again, even just down to like the wording we use when we're forming the different roles that we do. And that leads me quite nicely to the word champions. So instead of calling them our Formula E volunteers, we call them our Formula E champions. And it's our champions volunteer program that we're calling it. And we've had really great feedback on this. The wording around champions just makes them feel a part of something bigger. That language makes them feel valued, it makes the experience feel elevated, but it also makes them feel connected to the person next to them. When they're volunteering, the person next to them is a champion as well, but they're also champions of Formula E. And it kind of turns our volunteers turns them into kind of like from a helper to an ambassador of the sport. And we've kind of seen that they've really valued that since we've made that change in that wording. The next thing is just like around branding. I've got branding all over me. We really understand the importance of that global branding being a part of our volunteer program. So we have volunteer programs in every market. So for example, we have a Sao Paulo volunteer program, Mexico, London is our flagship volunteer program, Berlin. So you see, we've got locality, but one of the reasons that our volunteers like to volunteer with us is because of the sport. It's because of Formula E. They're fans of the sport and they want to get engaged with it. So when they see the Formula E branding everywhere, it makes them feel part of something bigger. So we're really conscious about getting that branding on every touch point across the full volunteer journey, from our WhatsApp chats to Rosterify, to our volunteer website, down to the uniform that they're wearing. Again, it makes them feel part of something bigger, something quite polished, something professional, something global. And it's kind of getting that balance between regional and global. We're always trying to strike the balance between the regional and global messaging that we're pushing out in our volunteer program. But we've found that global branding on everything, is really important to our volunteers. Energy. I mean, when you're talking about marketing, it's basically every single touch point that you have with your customer base. Our customer base is volunteers. We make sure that we're embodying the Formula E values in everything that we do. So when I'm briefing them, I want to make sure that I'm passing those values on to them. If they see me embodying that energy, that passion, then they will do it as well in their role. So that's really important to us. I'll go on to community content in a little bit around the Instagram and the TikTok that we do. I've talked about knowing your audience. So we're really data driven. It steers how we talk to people and engage with them, and it's understanding their reason for why. And that's something that Martin was obviously talking about earlier. But we kind of have 4 different buckets as to why people volunteer with us. One, they're a fan of the sport. That's really easy. They're the people that want to be closer to the sport. So we might steer them towards a different role that we have on site. So we have a ceremonies role which means that they'll be really close to the cars, they'll be really close to podium, they're really engaged with the sport. That's something that's really important to them when they're volunteering with us. We have people that care about our sustainability mission. So we would push them towards our sustainability roles, who are our sustainability champions. And that just steers their experience with us on site to something that they really value. Part of it, obviously, is something we talked about earlier. A lot of people volunteer because of community. They want to connect with like-minded people. That is just something we embody in our whole volunteer program. And then another one, which is actually something that we see across all of our, we have different demographics in each market. So you'll see kind of like so for example, in London, maybe our volunteer age data is a little bit older, but in Sao Paulo and Berlin, maybe they're a little bit younger. But something that we see across all of our volunteer programs is that everyone wants to build their skills and add to their CV. So again, we'll just maybe tailor the roles to the skills that they're trying to learn. Pride and experience. I mean, we talked about the branding, we talked about the energy. Really, it comes down to an experience, and it's what Martin was saying earlier around feels. We want to make sure that they have the best day they've ever had on site with us. So really taking care of their experience, reflecting our values in everything that we do. If our volunteers have an amazing time with us, they're going to go and tell their friends, they're going to come back. That word of mouth marketing is as important as anything else. Cool, Martin, do you want to get the next bit up? So this is something that me and my team have been working on quite closely. We really wanted to, actually, do you know what it came from? We were on Rosterify, and we were going like, how have all of these volunteers found us? So we were going on that data on the back end of Rosterify, and loads of volunteers said that they found us through TikTok and Instagram. And we were like, we're not on TikTok and Instagram. But it was all of our volunteers doing TikToks whilst they're on site with us, and then other people seeing it organically and then deciding they wanted to volunteer with us because of the things they'd seen on there. And we were like, this is really important. This is something we should be tapping into. So we made the role of our content champions. The role of the content champion is basically to capture the experiences of all of our volunteers before, during, and after a race, kind of showcasing what it means to be a Formula E volunteer, and pushing that journey out onto TikTok and Instagram. Why this is really important is because it is peer-to-peer. So our volunteers are talking to potential volunteers. It is literally showing their journey. It shows real volunteer experience. It's celebrating the volunteers that are on site with us. And it shows that before, during, and after journey of our volunteers. So the way that it works is we basically bring our content champions on site for the full race week, as well as the race weekend. They're gathering content, they're engaging with everything that's going on site. And then they're pushing videos out onto our Instagram and TikTok, as well as just gathering content that we can use throughout the season as well. A reason that this is something that's kind of landed so well is that I've talked about our volunteer program kind of striking the balance between local and global. Obviously, Formula E is a global entity, but our volunteer programs are local. So this localized content means that it's in the native language, which leads to higher engagement, but it also leans into local trends as well. So again, you're striking the balance between like consistency and relevance here. We're really leaning into local relevance and what will matter to the people that we're trying to target in that community. And it creates a bit more of an authentic community as well. Again, just like volunteers in Jakarta speaking to people on social in Jakarta is going to have much more of an impact than me speaking, or a global representative from Formula E pushing out content. We also identified kind of like added value. So any barriers or friction that kept coming through the volunteer journey was just like, how will it actually look when we're on site? What does the role of activation champion actually do? So we started doing like videos on how to get to the venue, day in the life videos, and what different roles look like in reality on site. So again, it's from the volunteers' perspective. So that takeover has meant it's been really quite low touch for us as the Formula E employees and the team that travels around, but it's had really high impact for quite low touch from our side. We also do have a global volunteer who helps to onboard all of the local content champions as well, who's called Annie, who is amazing. I've tried to whistle through all of that. Sorry if I spoke really, really quickly.
No, that's excellent. I love it. I love it. And I love the role of a content champion as a volunteer, not just
So it's our most popular role now. We
yeah, I bet
cannot
it is.
steer anyone away from content champion. They're all like, we want to be content champions.
Booked up, sold out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody that was dropping questions in as well. As you can see, we've got quite a few on here. I appreciate we're just running out of time now, but if you just humor me, if you could hang around just for a minute or two, we can answer a couple of these questions, and then I will share all this stuff out. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you very much for dropping back in. Pat, have we still got Pat, or have we lost Pat?
No, I'm still here, still here.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you for both Guide Dogs and for Marie for going through those. Let's jump into a couple of these questions. I think one or two of these came in while I was talking too, but if you've got something to add to these as well, please do jump in. How do you marry up people like us to things like this with attracting a diverse range of people? I saw that question come in while we were going through the presentation. I love this question because it is a challenge. How do you it's kind of like pushing and pull at the same time here. How do I group people together to communicate to them, to get them engaged with my volunteer program, while at the same time trying to reach more people? The way and feel free to jump in, you guys, but the way that I kind of view this is that when this person has written diverse, I'm wondering what they meant by diverse, and that could be diverse ethnicity, and that's one thing. It could be diverse by demographic of age, but often it's diverse by principles and what they believe in too. But ultimately, if someone is drawn towards your program, there will be a hook. I think you can overcomplicate some of this stuff by deviating too much from the story of your brand and the mission that you're trying to come up with. You will attract like-minded people if the why you're doing it, what the overall goal is really, really clear. Has anybody else got any to add on that one? Because that was quite a popular question.
Yeah, I think definitely like platform differentiation as well. Like obviously I talked through like different demographics in terms of the platform. So, you know, we have a different audience on our Instagram and TikTok channels than we do on our Facebook. And it's just making sure that you use your content to attract that audience on those platforms. I think that can really help.
Yeah. Question for Guide Dogs on here. Can the tools Guide Dogs use on the show filter by age so we can target the persona?
So I think for that one, unfortunately not. I know that Google Trends definitely does not, and I think Answer the Public, perhaps if you buy the kind of paid version, you might be able to. But with Trends, I would just lean into exactly what Danielle has said, that you've got different demographics on different social media channels. So depending on the trends on those social media channels, you know exactly what that particular age range is interested in that day, that week, that month, and what they want to hear about. So hopefully, although those kind of bigger tools like Google Trends and Answer the Public don't give you that fragmentation that you need, hopefully the social media channels do, because you know the people that are on them and their age ranges and the kind of trends that they want to hear about. So I hope that kind of answers it a little bit.
Emma, what you've got, you obviously use a volunteer management platform that allows you to capture information. Do you use any of the information that you capture to change the messaging, or is it like it's the program that you're promoting?
Yeah, if we're kind of like looking locally, it helps us understand our Berlin demographic versus like our Sao Paulo demographic. That's kind of as deep as we go in terms of like how we communicate with people, and sometimes that steers whether we're going to use like email, SMS, but also kind of like sometimes the content that we're pushing out on socials as well. But I mean, it doesn't go super deep, to be honest.
Here's a good question probably for all of you. How do you deal with short attention spans on social Don't they say 3 seconds or 2 seconds and it's gone
Yes,
or something?
you've got
Lean
3
into it.
seconds. It's just what I was saying earlier about the hook at the beginning. You need to make sure that it is engaging enough to captivate people's attention span. So a lot of videos using like the biggest highlight of the video at the start and then going into it, or as I said earlier, like a question that really resonates with the audience, or like a shocking fact or a statistic, and all that sort of stuff can really help. But yeah, you've got the first 3 seconds, unfortunately, to captivate people's attentions nowadays. So just trying to make that beginning as engaging as possible.
I think
Yeah, I
that's
would
when it
just really quickly. Sorry,
when
go
you lean.
for it, Emma.
I think that's where it kind of helps when you're leaning into trends as well.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons we kind of use like local people that are passionate about content, because they're going to be able to speak to the people in their local market better than I would. So they're the ones that will be able to create a bit more engaging content than I would be able to speak to someone in Sao Paulo.
Yeah, and I think also just doing the research before, because obviously you want to be talking about things that people want to hear about. So, yeah, while it's really great to jump on trends as fast as possible, you need to be creating quality content. And again, user-generated stuff works really great too. So don't be afraid to reach out to your champions like Formula E have. To create stuff that is authentic, because like Martin said, people really want authentic stuff right now. So do the research before you try and hook people.
And we've got a question here. I think it's probably more directed at you, Emma, because it's specifically about the champions. But how often do the social media champions post, and do you have a sign off for the content? That would terrify me if somebody had
Yeah.
carte blanche just to go for it.
So the way it works is it's kind of like a volunteer takeover. So we would have a team of maybe like 6 content champions working on an event, but they do have a supervisor who they report into. And then that supervisor will report into myself or the Formula E lead, and we do get final say on all of the videos that are going out. Sometimes they get carried away and they post things, but I'm on every account, so I can remove things. So for example, sometimes we'll get volunteers sharing photos with their like accreditation. That's a big no-no from us, so we would automatically just remove those. So we do try and have final say, but when you're in a race week and I'm running left, right and center, but we want to be consistent with posting, sometimes that's not realistic. That's where Annie, our like global volunteer, comes in as well. She's in every single group chat in every market, so she also would have sign off as well. And she's also logged in, so she can remove things as well. There's only been once or twice where we've had any problems, and it's more around that accreditation piece. In terms of like consistency around posting, we tend to have like a timeline of stuff that we're trying to post out during the week. So we would, I don't know, usually have like a teaser video the week before, then we would have like briefings on the Wednesday. So we have quite a set timeline around what we're talking about throughout the week. But yeah, we try and get them to push out quite a lot of content during the race week, and again there's about 6 of them posting, so it can get quite heavy, but also a lot of the point of them gathering lots of content is so that we can keep talking after the event has happened, because that's one of the problems we used to face as well, is that we're leading up to Sao Paulo, we're talking loads on socials, and then Sao Paulo's finished and we go dead. So it's really important for us to keep that engagement going, and actually that's the most important thing to us as well, is not going quiet after the race, is then looking to the next one, doing a recap, celebrating the volunteers for all of the work they've done. So yeah, I mean, it varies dependent on whether it's a race week, whether it's like 2 weeks before the race, depending on how often they post, but quite a lot during race week. We like to make noise.
Right. That just about wraps everything up for today. Like I said, we got I think it was 65, 70 people signed up for this webinar, which was and I got just as many people messaged me directly to say that they could do it for this day. Is there going to be a follow-up date or something like that, or could you share the slides? So much, in fact, that we've lined up part 2 of this with Tatum Tatum is an F1 host and involved in Motorsport Magazine, and she's a content writer, social media guru. I love what she does. She builds up these brilliant communities. She's a bundle of fun as well. And Amy from Silverstone. Silverstone are one of the customers at Rostify. Amy is one of the volunteer management manager there. She is awesome, super enthusiastic, incredibly driven, and they've got a massive program, 1,500 volunteers that are involved in a lot of their events, and she's got great stuff to add to the conversation there. So thank you very much for Danielle, Pat, and Emma for offering their time. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up there. You can find more events from Rostify, more webinars on our website. We've got an event coming up on the 17th of September where we'll be showing the results of a national survey for volunteer managers, which has sold out. But the good news is that we're doing a live Q&A with Casper and the research agent that we worked with. We're going to talk through the results. Got about 110 people signed up for that so far. So it's already dwarfed this one, which I thought was really popular. So that's really, really good. You can find Danielle and Pat and Emma on LinkedIn. Sign up for their volunteer programs. Get involved in London Formula E event and be involved in Guide Dogs too. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for our guests.